The orbital station floated in silence above the frozen blue planet. To most people, it was a wonder of engineering, full of lights, voices, and life. To Evan, the quiet human janitor, it was simply a place he cleaned. While alien diplomats argued, in the grand halls and traders shouted in the markets, he swept floors, scrubbed walls, and fixed leaking pipes. He preferred it that way. Evan was not a man who wanted attention. He had short brown hair, plain clothes, and the kind of face people forgot as soon as they looked away. Being invisible was his skill. If others noticed him at all, it was usually to ask him to move his cleaning cart out of the way. That was fine with him. One evening, when the station's corridors were dim and mostly empty, Evan was working in a quiet cargo wing. The hum of the machines was the only sound. He pushed his mop bucket along the floor, whistling softly when something caught his eye. Behind a large crate, something moved. At first he thought it was just a shadow, but then he saw a small figure, crouched low, hiding. "Hello?" Evan said carefully. His voice was calm, like someone talking to a stray animal. He was used to finding stowaway pets or children sneaking where they should not be. The figure turned. It was a girl, but not human. Her skin had a faint silver glow, and her long dark hair-framed eyes that seemed too big and bright for her small face. She looked frightened, clutching her knees. Evan raised his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The girl opened her mouth as if to speak. At first no sound came, then the faintest whisper slipped out. It was broken, barely more than a breath. He couldn't understand the words, but he could feel the struggle behind them. She was trying. "You're whispering?" Evan asked softly. He crouched to her level. "Are you lost?" The girl nodded quickly, her eyes wide. She looked around, clearly afraid of being found. Her hands shook as she tried to form more sounds. The whispers came again, soft and trembling. Evan leaned closer, straining to hear. It was not full speech, but he caught pieces of meaning. Words like home, don't, and hide. Evan's chest tightened. Whoever she was, she didn't just want to be found. She was running from something. He took out a small notepad from his pocket. He always carried it to write cleaning notes for himself. Now he held it out, flipping to a blank page. "Here," he said gently, offering her the pen. "Can you write?" The girl stared at it, then shook her head. Her whisper came again, sad this time. She could not. Okay, Evan said. "That's fine." He drew a little smiley face on the page, then pointed to her. "Safe." He drew a shield symbol. Then he pointed to himself. "Me." He tapped his chest. "Evan?" Her silver eyes softened a little. She whispered a sound almost like Lyra. "Lyra," Evan repeated. He smiled faintly. "Nice to meet you." For a moment, there was a strange peace. The janitor and the mute girl sitting in the dim corridor with only a notepad and whispers between them. She reached out and touched the drawn shield. Her lips moved in a soft breath. "Safe." Evan nodded. "Yes, safe." But the peace broke in an instant. Heavy boots echoed down the hall. Harsh alien voices barked orders. Evan recognized the tone of soldiers. Lyra's body stiffened. Fear filled her eyes. She shook her head quickly and pressed a finger to her lips, begging him not to speak. The voices grew louder. "Find the child. Search every section." Evan's stomach tightened. Whoever they were looking for her, and not in a gentle way. He looked back at Lyra. She was trembling, whispering broken words he barely caught. "Don't take back." Evan's mind raced. He was only a janitor. He had no power here. If soldiers found her, what could he do? But as he looked at her terrified face, he felt something inside him shift. He had spent his whole life trying not to be noticed. Yet at this moment, someone had noticed him, someone small, helpless, and afraid. Evan moved quickly. He grabbed a cleaning tarp from his cart and draped it over the crate. "Hide here," he whispered. "Stay low." Lyra slipped beneath it. her silver glow dimming in the shadows. The soldiers stormed past the corridor. They carried long weapons, their armored suits gleaming under the lights. Their voices were sharp. "She cannot have gone far. The heir must be found." Evan froze. The heir? He blinked. Lyra was not just a lost child. She was someone important. Someone powerful. He kept his head down, pretending to scrub the floor as they marched by. One soldier glanced at him, then ignored him. Just another human janitor, too low to matter. When the last of them vanished around the corner, Evan exhaled shakily. He pulled back the tarp. Lyra crawled out, her eyes full of both fear and relief. "You're an heir?" he whispered. She whispered back, the sound thin but urgent. "Yes." Evan stared. He had no idea what he was stepping into, but he knew one thing. This girl trusted him now. And in a station full of powerful strangers, that trust might change everything. As the echoes of soldiers faded, Evan felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He was just a janitor, yet somehow he had stumbled into a secret that could shake the station itself. And in that silent moment he realized his quiet life was no longer quiet. The next morning the station buzzed with tension. Rumors spread fast in places like this. Traders whispered in the markets, workers exchanged worried looks, and even the human staff in the lower decks had heard pieces of the story. The heir of the Ice Queen was missing. Evan listened quietly, while pushing his cart. He pretended not to care, but his mind kept drifting back to the silver-eyed girl who whispered her name as Lyra. He had hidden her until the soldiers left. Then she had slipped away into the night. Now he wasn't sure if he would ever see her again, but fate had other plans. Later that day, as he cleaned one of the grand corridors near the diplomatic halls, the air turned heavy. Guards in shining armor marched in first, their boots striking the floor like drums. Behind them walked a tall woman. Her gown shimmered like ice. Her pale skin glowed faintly, and her eyes were colder than the frozen planet below. Everyone around stopped and bowed, even the aliens who normally bowed to no one. Evan had seen her only in passing before, but now there was no mistake. Lady Seraphine, the Ice Queen herself, ruler's representative of her empire, and mother of the missing heir. Her gaze swept across the hall like a winter storm. Her eyes fell on Evan. He quickly lowered his head and pushed his cart aside. He didn't want to be noticed. Not by her. But then a small sound broke through the silence, a faint whisper. Evan's head jerked up. From behind one of the pillars, Lyra peeked out, her silver eyes locked onto him. She hurried forward and clung to his sleeve, whispering softly, "Evan." The hall went silent. Everyone froze. Seraphine's cold eyes widened just a fraction. She stepped forward, her sharp heels echoing on the marble floor. Her voice cut like ice. "Lyra." The girl whispered something too soft for the others to hear, then pressed herself closer to Evan's side. Evan felt dozens of eyes burn into him. He wanted to vanish into the floor. But Lyra's trembling hand held onto his sleeve, and he could not move. Seraphine stopped in front of them. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Her beauty was sharp, almost cruel, like a statue carved from frost. She looked down at Evan as though he were dust on the floor. "You?" she said coldly. "What have you done to my daughter?" Evan swallowed hard. Nothing. I found her hiding. I just made sure she was safe." "Safe?" Seraphine's voice rose slightly, but it was still controlled, like ice cracking under pressure. "Do you think a human janitor can protect her?" Lyra tugged on Evan's sleeve and whispered again, more firmly this time. "Safe? With him." The hall gasped. A mute child who never spoke had whispered for the human. Even Seraphine's mask slipped for a moment, shock flickering across her face. She quickly hardened again, but her eyes lingered on Evan, sharp and questioning. "You will step away from her now," she ordered. Evan hesitated. Lyra's grip tightened. She shook her head, whispering desperately, "No, don't." The fear in her voice struck Evan like a blade. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of her own mother. Seraphine's expression faltered again. For a moment, something softer moved behind her icy eyes, but it vanished quickly. "Enough," she said. She reached for her daughter's arm. Lyra whispered sharply. "No!" She pulled back and clung tighter to Evan. The hall filled with whispers from the crowd, shocked and curious. Evan could feel Seraphine's fury like a storm ready to break. But beneath it, he noticed something else: pain. This woman, feared across the galaxy, suddenly looked less like a queen and more like a mother who realized her child preferred a stranger's arms. Seraphine's voice trembled, just a little. "Why Lyra? Why him?" Lyra whispered softly, pointing at Evan's chest. "Listens." The word struck like a hammer. Evan blinked. The crowd gasped. And Seraphine froze. Her perfect mask cracked further. She stared at her daughter as though the word had wounded her. Slowly, she lowered her hand. Her voice, when it came, was softer. "Go to your chambers, Lyra. We will discuss this later." Guards moved to escort the girl. Lyra looked at Evan, whispering again, "Don't leave." But eventually she obeyed and followed, though her eyes never stopped looking back at him. Seraphine lingered, her cold gaze fixed on Evan. "If you ever approach my daughter again, human, I will see you removed from the station." Her words were sharp, but there was a thin crack in her voice. Evan bowed his head. Understood. She turned and swept away, her gown trailing like frost behind her. The crowd parted, silent as shag. The orbital station hummed softly as night fell. Most of the diplomats and traders had returned to their quarters, leaving the corridors quiet. Evan pushed his janitorial cart through the dim hallways, listening to the distant hum of engines. Despite all the chaos of the day, his thoughts kept drifting to Lyra, the silver-eyed girl who had trusted him more than her own mother. He knew the station was no ordinary place. Hidden doors, maintenance tunnels, and forgotten service corridors stretched like veins beneath the public halls. That knowledge had kept him alive as a janitor, and tonight, it would be his greatest advantage. A soft whisper reached him from behind a stack of crates. "Evan, Lyra." He spun around and saw her small form slipping through a side entrance. She had clearly run away from her quarters. Her silver eyes shone in the low light, and though her lips moved, only soft whispers escaped. "I can't stay," she whispered. "Mother watches." Evan knelt and took her hand gently. "I know, but it's okay. You're safe with me." Her small hand squeezed his. She leaned close and whispered again, almost urgent this time. "Show. Secret. Place." Evan nodded. He stood and beckoned her to follow. Together they moved through hidden service doors, down narrow stairwells, and into the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the station. The smell of oil and machinery filled the air, but Lyra's eyes sparkled. Here, away from the grand halls and commanding eyes, she laughed, a soft, almost silent sound. Evan smiled. He had never heard anyone so joyful in this lonely place. He realized she had never had a moment like this before. Not a moment where she could simply be herself, "See?" he said softly. "No one can find us here." Lyra's hands danced in the air. She tried to form words, but only whispers came. Evan realized she was attempting her own form of sign language. He copied her gestures clumsily, pointing to himself, then to her, then drawing a heart in the air. Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. Then she laughed again, a sound that was almost musical in the quiet tunnel. Evan felt warmth in his chest. He had always thought humans were small and powerless, here among alien rulers, but right now he was her protector, and he realized something deeper. He mattered to her. Suddenly, a metallic clang echoed down the tunnel. Both froze. "Someone's coming," Evan whispered. "Quick, this way." He led her through a narrow duct, small enough that only a human and a small child could pass through. Their footsteps were soft against the metal floor. From the shadows, they saw a group of security drones patrolling. The machine's sensors glowed faint red. If they were detected, the consequences could be severe. Evan thought fast. He grabbed a mop from his cart and used the long handle to press a nearby panel. A vent cover slid down silently, hiding them from the drone's sensors. Lyra's eyes were wide with admiration. She whispered, "Smart." Evan chuckled softly. "Just janitor tricks." They continued, winding deeper into the station's hidden network. Evan showed her a small observation deck overlooking the frozen planet below. The view was breathtaking: vast ice plains, jagged mountains, and storms swirling like silver clouds. Lyra pressed her hands against the glass, whispering in awe. Evan watched her and realized something important. She had never experienced freedom. Not really. The Ice Queen's rules had kept her small, quiet, and careful. But here, she could be herself. Evan sat beside her on the metal floor. "You're brave, you know," he said softly. "Braver than a lot of people here." Lyra's hand reached for his, her gestures careful. She drew a small circle in the air, then pointed to her chest, then back to him. Evan understood immediately. She was telling him that he had given her courage. "You did that," he whispered. "You're not alone." Hours passed. They explored tunnels, climbed old maintenance ladders, and even found a small abandoned greenhouse filled with fragile plants. Lyra whispered names for the plants, and Evan listened. For the first time, he realized that humans were not the only ones who needed to feel heard, but their quiet adventure could not last forever. Back in the grand halls, the station's security network had already begun scanning for anomalies. Whispers of the missing heir and her human companion reached the ears of the alien diplomats. Some were intrigued, others suspicious. Evan knew that Lyra's secret could not stay hidden for long. The danger was real, and he was just one human, against an entire station full of guards, soldiers, and rulers. Yet when he looked at her, smiling quietly in her own way, he felt something he had never felt before: determination. He would protect her. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the tunnels. Red lights flashed. Evan grabbed Lyra's hand. "Drones," he said. "We have to move. Now." They ran through the twists and turns of the service corridors. Evan led her past dead ends, over service catwalks, and under dangling pipes. The alarms grew louder. From above, the sound of armored boots echoed. Soldiers were coming. Lyra's small hands trembled, but she stayed close. Her whispers were quick, pointing directions and helping him navigate. She was no longer just the silent child. She was a partner in survival. Evan smiled faintly, pride swelling in his chest. "See? We're a team." They finally reached a small maintenance chamber. Evan barricaded the door with a metal cart. Breathing heavily, he knelt beside Lyra. "We're safe. For now." Lyra pressed her hands to his cheek, whispering softly, "Thank you." Evan felt his chest tighten. No human had ever meant so much to a child of an alien empire. He realized the danger ahead was not only for her, but for him as well. Yet, he no longer hesitated. He would face any threat for her. In the shadows, Seraphine watched from afar. Her icy demeanor did not falter, but inside, she felt something unfamiliar, fear mixed with awe. The human janitor, so small and unassuming, had somehow earned her daughter's trust. And with that trust came power she could not control. Evan looked at Lyra, who whispered her final words of the night. "Safe. Because you listen." He nodded, whispering back, "Always." For the first time in his life, Evan realized that being small did not mean being powerless. In the quiet of the tunnels under the hum of the station, a human janitor had become a hero. And the adventure was only just beginning. The orbital station never truly slept. Its hum was constant, like the heartbeat of a giant machine. But that night the hum seemed louder, more threatening. Evan and Lyra moved cautiously through the maintenance tunnels, their footsteps muffled against the metal floor. For days, Evan had been helping Lyra navigate secret corridors, showing her small gardens, hidden observation decks, and abandoned storage rooms. These were places her mother, the Ice Queen, never allowed her to visit. Lyra had laughed, whispered, and even signed little stories to him. She had begun to feel brave, and Evan had begun to feel alive, but safety was fragile. Evan had just guided Lyra into a small, unused workshop when he noticed it, the faintest hum of energy outside the door. A shadow moved across the vent. He froze, listening. "Someone's here," he whispered. Lyra pressed herself close, her eyes wide. Evan's hand went to his utility belt where he carried a few basic tools, wrenches, a flashlight, and a compact repair kit. He knew the odds were against him. One human against trained saboteurs could easily fail, but he could not let fear control him. The workshop door shook suddenly, a heavy force hitting it. Lyra whimpered softly, and Evan grabbed her hand. "Stay behind me," he said. The door splintered slightly under another hit. Then, from the shadows, figures appeared. Saboteurs, masked and armed, had found them. They were human size, but faster, stronger, and determined. Their mission was clear: capture the missing heir. Evan's mind raced. He had no weapon, no armor, only tools and courage. But he remembered all the secret passages he had learned as a janitor. He had the advantage of knowing the station better than anyone. "Don't touch her," Evan shouted, using his voice to sound braver than he felt. He grabbed a heavy wrench from the workbench and swung it, forcing one saboteur back. Lyra gasped, but did not hide. She trusted him. The saboteurs advanced. Evan ducked, grabbed a canister of cleaning foam, and threw it at the floor. It sprayed into the first attacker's path, making the metal slick. The saboteur slipped, hitting the wall with a clang. Lyra clapped her hands silently, signaling approval. Even in danger, she seemed amazed at how clever he was. Evan led them deeper into the workshop, then ducked into a small maintenance shaft just wide enough for them to crawl through. The saboteurs followed, but Evan had anticipated this. He had rigged a panel in the shaft to collapse under weight. As the first saboteur crawled over it, it gave way slightly, slowing their pursuit. "Keep moving," Evan whispered urgently. Lyra followed closely, whispering directions she had memorized from previous exploration. They emerged in an abandoned storage corridor. Evan used his flashlight to signal, pointing to hidden doors he had discovered long ago. They slipped through, one into a quiet observation deck, the vast frozen planet visible below. Evan set Lyra down gently, checking her for injuries. She shook her head, whispering, "Safe, because you clever." He smiled faintly. "Just a janitor," he replied, though pride warmed his chest. From the shadows, the saboteurs regrouped. One pressed a communication device, signaling reinforcements. Evan knew it was only a matter of time before the next wave arrived. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the observation deck entrance, harsh, commanding, and alien. "Step away from the child." Seraphine, the orbital station was never truly quiet. Even when diplomats slept, engines hummed, alarms blinked, and distant ships moved above the frozen planet below. For Evan, the quiet hum of the night was both comforting and unsettling. He had spent days guiding Lyra through secret tunnels, teaching her gestures and small signs so she could communicate. Now their bond had grown deeper. She trusted him completely, and he realized he would do anything to keep her safe. Lyra, the princess, had begun to explore her own courage. She whispered directions, pointed out hidden doors, and even led Evan through old maintenance corridors he had not discovered himself. The small girl, who had once been too frightened to speak, was now acting as a partner in their secret explorations. But the peace was fragile. Political tension in the station had grown in the last few days. Word of the missing heir and the human janitor spread quickly. Diplomats whispered behind closed doors, Traders exchanged worried glances and rumors reached the ears of alien soldiers. Some viewed Evan as an accidental hero, others saw him as a threat, and for the first time Evan realized that even small humans could become central figures in galactic events. That evening, Lyra led Evan to a hidden garden deep inside the station. Faint lights illuminated delicate plants that seemed impossible on a metal station floating in orbit. Lyra crouched beside a small flowering vine, whispering its name in her soft, musical way. "You see," Evan said, smiling. "No one can hurt you here." Lyra signed quickly, showing him a circle, then pointing to her chest, then back to him. He understood. She was telling him he had given her courage. Evan nodded. "And you gave me courage too, Lyra." They spent the night exploring quiet corners of the station, sharing whispered stories of Earth, of frozen planets, and of places they could never visit together. For the first time, both felt free from fear, but freedom had its price. The next morning, while Evan was cleaning near a major docking bay, an urgent message arrived from security. Saboteurs had been spotted moving through less used corridors. Their intention was to exploit Lyra's silence to take control of her empire. The political situation had escalated, and Evan realized the danger was growing beyond just his and Lyra's immediate safety. He raced through the tunnels to Lyra's hiding place. She was already waiting, eyes wide but calm. "They coming?" she whispered. "Yes," Evan said. "But we're ready. We'll be careful." Lyra reached for his hand, whispering. Together. They moved swiftly, using every hidden passage Evan had discovered over the years. He had learned that knowledge of the station was a weapon, almost as powerful as the saboteurs' arms. They avoided patrols, slipped past security drones, and even used old maintenance lifts to move vertically without being detected. Meanwhile, Seraphine, the Ice Queen, observed the events from her private chambers. Her icy composure was faltering. She had watched her daughter laugh, play, and trust a human janitor, a human she had always considered weak. Her cold heart, so carefully guarded for years, began to feel something foreign, admiration, envy, and something she could not name when she finally descended to a secure observation deck. She found Evan and Lyra waiting in a hidden corridor, having successfully avoided the saboteurs. Seraphine approached silently, her presence commanding respect. She said nothing at first, just observed. Lyra whispered to Evan, "Mother," watching. Evan felt the tension but kept his calm. He had faced danger before, and he knew Seraphine's judgment could be harsh, but he also sensed a change in her. Finally, Seraphine spoke. "You have kept her safe," she said softly, though her voice still carried authority. "When everyone else would have failed, you succeeded." Evan bowed his head. "I just did what I could. I only wanted her to be safe." Seraphine's eyes softened as she looked at him. "You have given her something I never could." Evan looked up, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "The courage to be herself," Seraphine said quietly. "To speak in her own way. To trust someone outside of her family." Her words were almost a whisper, yet they carried immense weight. For the first time in years, the Ice Queen admitted her limitations, not in power but in heart. Lyra's silver eyes sparkled. She whispered quickly, signing for Evan to understand. "She likes you." Evan blinked. He had expected gratitude, perhaps respect, but not this. Still, he nodded, understanding the meaning in her actions and words. Later, when the station had quieted, Seraphine privately asked Evan how he had done it. "How did you gain her trust so quickly?" Evan smiled faintly. "I just listened. I didn't try to control her. I didn't give orders. I listened." The simplicity of his answer struck her like a cold wind in a summer storm. She realized that all her power, her rules, her discipline, none of it had taught her daughter the most important thing: to feel safe and understood. And that lesson had come from a human janitor. At that moment, Seraphine's icy demeanor truly began to melt. Not completely, she was still powerful, still sharp, but the frost around her heart had cracked. And that crack would only grow. The saboteurs were still a threat, but Evan's actions had already changed the station. Aliens who had once underestimated humans now whispered about the clever janitor. Diplomats who considered humans unimportant began to see them as capable, brave, and resourceful. Lyra, sensing the shift, whispered to Evan, "We, stronger now?" "Yes," Evan replied. "Together we're stronger than anyone thinks." That night, they returned to the hidden chamber, exhausted but alive. Lyra curled up on the small cot, whispering stories about the frozen planet below, and Evan listened. For the first time, he felt the truth of something he had always suspected. Humans, though small and underestimated, could change even the coldest hearts. Outside, Seraphine gazed from her observation deck at her daughter, smiling, quietly for the first time in years. The Ice Queen's heart was no longer entirely frozen. She had seen courage, loyalty, and kindness in a human who had risked everything for her child. And in that recognition, she realized something extraordinary. Even she could learn from a human. And far above the frozen planet, the orbital station continued its hum. It carried secrets, tensions, and hope. A human janitor had changed the balance of power, not through strength, but through listening, caring, and courage. The legend of Evan, the quiet janitor who had given the princess her voice and courage, was only beginning. The orbital station trembled that morning. Alarms blared and red lights flashed through the corridors. Saboteurs had returned, more organized and dangerous than before. Their goal was clear: capture Lyra, the silver-eyed princess, and use her as leverage against her mother's empire. Evan gripped his mop handle like a staff, his heart pounding, but his mind clear. Lyra clung to his arm, whispering directions, and pointing to hidden doors only he knew. Together they moved through the maintenance tunnels, ducking under pipes and slipping through secret panels. "This way," Evan whispered. He led her to a small observation deck high above the frozen planet. From there they could see the chaos below: drones moving through the corridors, soldiers chasing shadows, and flashing alarms everywhere. Lyra's hand pressed into his, her eyes full of trust. She whispered a word he had come to treasure: "Safe." Evan smiled faintly. "We will make sure of it." Above them, Seraphine, the Ice Queen, appeared silently. Her presence was commanding, and even the saboteurs hesitated at her sight, but she did not move to attack. Instead, she watched Evan and Lyra with a mixture of pride and concern. Evan had no armor, no advanced weaponry, only courage, knowledge of the station, and determination. And yet, he had become the center of a storm that no one had expected. Suddenly, a saboteur appeared on the observation deck below. They had discovered another access point. Evan's mind raced. He could see a way to block their path using the deck's retractable railings and loose maintenance crates. "Lyra, stay close," he whispered. Together, they moved silently. Evan pushed crates into the narrow corridors, creating barriers. When the first saboteur approached, he tripped on a hidden cable Evan had carefully placed. Another slipped on a patch of cleaning foam. Evan smiled quietly. His janitor skills, once used for mundane work, were now his tools of survival. Lyra's eyes shone with awe. She signed quickly, showing that she understood the cleverness of his plan. Her small hands guided him to the next hidden passage, leading them to the station's central control room. If they could reach it, they could lock down sections and prevent the saboteurs from reaching the rest of the station. Evan glanced at her. "Ready?" She nodded, whispering, "Together." Inside the control room, Evan quickly tapped the security panels. He had learned the systems in his spare time while cleaning: small buttons, maintenance overrides, emergency locks. He moved with precision, activating lockdowns in sections where the saboteurs were advancing. Red lights turned green, doors sealed, and the attackers were trapped or rerouted. Outside, Seraphine watched, her eyes softening. The human janitor, so small and unassuming, had taken control of a situation that would have defeated even seasoned soldiers. "Evan," she whispered under her breath. "You've changed everything." The saboteurs regrouped, trying to find another way into the control room. Evan grabbed a heavy wrench from his utility kit and moved to the doorway. Lyra stayed behind him, her small hand resting on his sleeve. He remembered all the whispers she had given him over the past days. Tiny hints, secret gestures, and they were pie.